It wasn't my decision. The words slipped quietly from Emma Raducanu's lips, but they thundered across the sporting world like a storm rolling over center court at Wimbledon. For months, speculation and rumors had circled her like vultures. Was she truly in control of her destiny, or had her career become a puppet show orchestrated by unseen hands? Now, for the first time, Raducanu has broken her silence, and with that single statement, the glittering fairy tale that began under the bright lights of New York in 2021 suddenly looks far darker. The summer of 2021 is etched into the annals of tennis history. Raducanu, a teenager ranked outside the top 100, marched through to the qualifying rounds of the U.S. Open with an ease that seemed impossible. Then she kept winning, and winning, until, against every conceivable odd, she became the first qualifier in history to claim a Grand Slam title without losing a single set. At just 18, she captured more than a trophy. She captured the imagination of a nation. The United Kingdom erupted. From pubs in Manchester to crowded living rooms in London's suburbs, fans roared in disbelief and pride. Even the Queen herself sent a personal congratulatory letter. Suddenly, Emma wasn't just a player. She was a national treasure. Overnight, Raducanu transformed into more than an athlete. She became a brand. Tiffany draped her in jewelry, Nike gave her the swoosh of champions, and British Airways flew her name across the skies. Magazine covers, sponsorships, red carpets. Emma Raducanu is no longer just a teenager chasing a fuzzy yellow ball. She was Britain's brightest star since Andy Murray. But hidden beneath the applause and the flashing cameras was a truth far more complicated. With every endorsement deal, every new photo shoot, every promise made to the corporate world came a heavier burden. Every match carried not only the hopes of fans, but the financial expectations of a global machine built on her name. And this, perhaps, is where the cracks began to form. Few remember that Emma was still a teenager, but barely an adult, when she was thrust into this blinding spotlight. The sudden change in her life was seismic. One moment she was a promising junior with potential. The next she was a multimillionaire global superstar. In the midst of this chaos, decisions had to be made. About her coaching team, her training schedule, her tournament entries, even her medical care. Her recent confession suggests otherwise. It wasn't my decision. 5 words that cast a long shadow over everything that has happened since New York. When Emma Raducanu stood on that podium in New York, holding aloft the gleaming U.S. Open trophy, she looked every bit the master of her destiny. Yet behind the smile, a storm was brewing. And it would soon manifest in one of the strangest patterns the sport has ever witnessed, the endless revolving door of coaches. Since her rise in 2021, Raducanu's coaching roster has resembled a carousel spinning out of control. Nigel Sears, Andrew Richardson, Torben Beltz, Dmitry Tursunov. Names once hailed as her guiding lights, now footnotes in a turbulent journey. Critics labeled her indecisive, unstable, even ungrateful. She doesn't know what she wants, pundits whispered. But then came her confession. It wasn't my decision. Suddenly the narrative shifted. Was Raducanu truly the architect of this instability? Or was she a pawn in a larger game, moved across the chessboard by managers, sponsors, and advisors convinced they knew best? Sources close to her camp hint at power struggles. Some claim sponsors preferred a high-profile European coach to boost her marketability abroad. Others insist certain appointments were driven by short-term PR optics rather than long-term development. Imagine being 19 years old, still discovering your own identity, while billion-dollar companies and seasoned executives debate who should stand at your side on court. Was Emma really firing coaches, or was she simply watching contracts dissolve over her head, powerless to intervene? The picture that emerges is not of a fickle teenager, but of a young athlete caught in the crossfire of competing interests. In tennis, the coach-player bond is sacred. Think of Rafael Nadal and Tony, Serena Williams and Patrick Mouratoglou, Novak Djokovic and Marian Vada. These partnerships endure because they are rooted in trust, stability, and mutual choice. For Raducanu, the absence of such stability has been glaring. Instead of building a foundation, she's been forced to rebuild again and again. Each new face brought new philosophies, new training regimes. The constant shifting of guidance is more than a headline. It is a weight. How does a young player focus on her forehand mechanics or service consistency when she is never sure who will be guiding her next week? How does she learn to trust her instincts when others are making her choices? The coaching carousel is not just a quirky storyline in Raducanu's career. It is a symptom of something far more troubling, the possibility that Britain's brightest tennis hope has never truly been in charge of her own path. Every fairy tale has its shadows, and for Emma Raducanu, they came not in the form of rivals across the net, but in the betrayal of her own body. From blistered hands that forced her to withdraw mid-match to chronic wrist problems and recurring ankle issues, Raducanu's career since 2021 has been defined as much by hospital rooms as by tennis courts. Her youthful frame, still adapting to the brutal demands of the professional circuit, seemed unable to withstand the ceaseless grind of the WTA Tour. But here lies the unsettling question. Were these injuries simply the unlucky hand of fate, or the inevitable consequence of choices made by others? Athletes are warriors by nature. They always want to compete. Yet behind them stand managers, sponsors, and organizers with competing agendas. Television contracts demand star players on court. Corporate sponsors expect visibility, not absence. And so the whispers grow louder. Was Emma pressured into returning before her body was ready? More than once, Raducanu stepped onto court strapped with tape, grimacing through rallies. Was this the determination of a champion, or the compliance of a teenager fulfilling obligations she never truly agreed to? Her confession, "It wasn't my decision," casts a haunting shadow over these memories. In 2023, Raducanu underwent surgeries on both wrists and her ankle, a triple blow that sidelined her for months. It was, in many ways, the price of those earlier battles, and while fans expressed sympathy, the silence from her camp was deafening. Who had authorized those earlier appearances? Who had deemed her fit to play when her body screamed otherwise? The world may never know. But to those who watched her limp from one tournament to the next, it felt less like bad luck and more like mismanagement. Injuries do not just break the body, they erode confidence. Imagine the frustration of waking each morning unsure if your body will obey you. Imagine reading headlines mocking your fragility, questioning your commitment, while privately knowing you wanted nothing more than to play. Only to be told, again and again, what you must do. Raducanu has spoken little of these darkest moments, but her eyes often reveal what her words do not. The exhaustion of a young athlete trapped between duty and desire, between ambition and exploitation. Her absence from major tournaments left an unmistakable void. Once a top 10 prospect, she slipped down the rankings, her name gradually sliding further away from the spotlight. For a player hailed as the future of British tennis, the contrast was heartbreaking. And yet, history is filled with champions who stumble before they soared again. Andre Agassi once fell outside the top 100 before reclaiming his throne. Serena Williams endured injuries that would have ended lesser careers, only to return and build the greatest legacy the sport has ever seen. Raducanu's story is far from over, but if she is to rise again, one thing is certain: the decisions must finally be hers. Raducanu is no longer just a tennis player. She is a brand. With deals from Tiffany, Nike, and British Airways, her image became a commodity. Her every appearance measured not only in points won, but in marketing value. The fairy tale of 2021 created expectations that bordered on impossible. Fans demanded another U.S. Open miracle at Wimbledon, the Australian Open, Roland Garros. Every loss sparked headlines of disappointment, every injury timeout dissected as weakness. But imagine carrying such weight at only 19. Was she playing for herself, or for an empire built on her shoulders? Her confession, "It wasn't my decision," suddenly reframes the story. Perhaps she was not failing to meet expectations. Perhaps she was never allowed to set them in the first place. When Emma finally admitted it wasn't my decision, the tennis world erupted. Social media lit up with shock, sympathy, and anger. Some fans felt a heartbreak, convinced she had been treated as a pawn in a game of profit and power. Others turned their criticism on her management team, accusing them of chasing sponsorship deals at the cost of her health. Yet there was also a spark of hope. For many, her words signaled the beginning of a fight back, the first step towards reclaiming control. In pubs, living rooms, and online forums across Britain, debates raged. Had the nation's darling been mismanaged, or was this simply the harsh reality of a modern sport? One truth was clear. RADUCANU had touched something deeper than tennis. She had reminded fans of the fragile humanity behind the headlines, and in doing so, won their hearts all over again. Once hailed as a top 10 prospect, RADUCANU's absence from major tournaments has seen her ranking tumble. The girl who once seemed destined to dominate the sport is now forced to fight her way back through qualifiers and wild cards, each comeback attempt scrutinized like a public trial. For many, it is a painful contrast. The meteoric champion reduced to chasing form and fitness, yet tennis careers are rarely linear. Andre Agassi fell outside the top 100 geese before rising again to glory. Serena Williams endured countless injuries before building an unmatched legacy. The same resilience could define Emma's future. But only if she is finally allowed to make her own choices. Her ranking today may not reflect her potential tomorrow. And should she return on her own terms, the comeback could be just as astonishing as the fairy tale that launched her career. RADUCANU's words have ignited a broader conversation within the sport. Former pros and analysts argue that what she truly needs is stability, one trusted coach, time to recover, and above all, freedom to control her own path. Tim Henman has urged patience, reminding critics she is still in her early 20s with her prime years ahead. Others go further, calling for structural reform. Should the WTA and federations protect young stars more aggressively, shielding them from the relentless grind of the tour and the predatory pull of commercial pressures? Her case highlights a dangerous paradox. The sport thrives on new faces, yet the same system often burns them out before they reach their potential. RADUCANU's confession is more than personal. It is symbolic, a mirror reflecting how modern tennis treats its prodigies. Whether change will follow remains uncertain, but the debate has only just begun. Emma Raducanu's journey is no longer just about backhands and forehands. It is about freedom, control, and identity. Her words, "It wasn't my decision," hang in the air like a challenge to the entire sporting world. Will she reclaim her career and silence the doubters, or remain ensnared by the invisible hands that shaped her downfall? The next chapter is unwritten, and perhaps that is what makes it so compelling. She has already lived a fairy tale. Could she now craft a comeback story even greater? Imagine Raducanu walking onto center court at Wimbledon, not as a symbol of obligation, but as a woman who finally owns her choices. That would be more than victory. It would be redemption. And so the question lingers. Is this the end of the fairy tale, or merely the beginning of her true story?